This week on Fish Ed, Jon outlines a guide-tested jig pulling pattern that's hard to beat when post-spawn walleye scatter in depths of 15 feet or less.
There's one right there. Got him. That feels like a good fish. You know, the thing about being out here and doing what we're doing early on this stuff that's out off of shore, you get a shot at bigger fish. You get that shot because your female walleyes, they'll have left. But a lot of times what happens is you'll have mixed in smallmouth bass that haven't gone up to shore yet to spawn. And then you'll even have other species out here. You know, you get some pike, you'll get a little bit of this, you'll get a little bit of that, because here's what happens. These fish, it's a natural stopping and resting point as they move off of the spawn. These first sets of structure. This is a walleye here. It's a really nice walleye. But this is a great example. This is a female walleye that's done with the spawn. She's moved out. Oh, perfect. She got herself unhooked for us right there. Look at that. I can show her to you and we'll get her right back in the water. But that's a female fish that's gotten done spawning and gotten out here onto this reef. And man, that's just what you can do when you're dragging jigs. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I get asked a lot of questions about this jig dragging tactic. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're really going to kind of try to dial it in for you and get it dialed down to where it's a super, super easy thing for you to do. That's a great fish right there. Let's get that fish back in the water. There's one right there. Got him. Now we're getting it dialed in. Here's what's going on. I probably started a little bit too shallow this morning. Now, one of the things I'll tell you is that doesn't mean there weren't fish up there. It's just my tactic this morning. They probably just weren't super aggressive up there. So coming through here, I'm asking for aggressive fish. I'm going 0.7, 0.8, and that's, let's kind of dial in here what we're doing. 15, 16 feet of water is where I've contacted these fish, and now I'm sitting here catching, okay? But here's what's happening. I'm going about 0.8 miles an hour, so the perfect jig size for me right now is an 1/8, okay? If you're up on top, now there are gonna be times those fish up there, they're gonna go crazy and you're gonna be able to get them with a tactic like this. If you're up on top, you're gonna go down to a 1/16 ounce. So anytime I'm fishing 12 feet of water or less, I'm gonna go to a 1/16 ounce, okay? If I'm fishing like I am right now, out off that deep edge, I'm gonna use that 1/8 ounce jig, because no matter what, I'm gonna go about the same speed. That 0.8, 0.9 miles an hour is the perfect speed. That's exactly where you wanna be. But now that I've figured out that these fish are sitting out here a little bit deeper, 14, 15 feet, now what I'm doing is I'm going with that 1/8, I'm cruising along at about 0.8 miles an hour. And all I'm doing is chucking it back behind me. I'm just giving it a cast. I'm not trying to bang bottom with this jig. When people hear dragging jigs, a lot of times I think the misnomer is they think it means you're gonna drag it on the bottom, and that's not what we're doing. I'm pulling it up above the bottom. Now here's the thing, you can say, well, geez, you know, how do you know exactly where you're at? I don't. I know I'm close to the bottom because when I slide up into shallower water, all of a sudden I'll start ticking. So that's the only way I'm really gonna know. But here's the thing, you don't have to be a foot off the bottom to catch these fish with this technique. You're running that big shiner minnow, you got that jig, and you're cruising along, and here's what happens. Those fish are more than willing to come up 2, 3, 4 feet. So I know I'm in that neighborhood. You don't wanna drag bottom. If you drag bottom, you're gonna be below a lot of those fish. So that's how I choose the jig size that I'm using. The other thing I'll tell you, I'm using a short shank jig, okay? And what that's allowing me to do is just go right through this shiner minnow. And what I'm actually doing here is I am not as worried. Like if I was Lindy rigging, okay, I'm gonna be really worried about keeping that shiner alive. So I'm gonna hook them through the lips. But because of the tactic we're using today, I'm moving that minnow. That minnow's already doing this. So you can go up through his skull, and that's gonna keep him hooked up a little bit better, okay? Because you are gonna have some scenarios where you're gonna lose some fish. It's just the way it works. There's nothing you can do about it. These fish will come up behind it, they'll grab at it, and sometimes they'll just tear that shiner off. You're gonna lose a lot more shiners if you are just hooking them through the lips when you're moving this fast, okay? It's a Lindy live bait jig. It's a great jig for what we're doing, okay? It's gonna swim nice, it pulls at the right angle, and it's got that wide gap short shank hook, so you're gonna hook up. There's one right there. Got him. Might have got a little lucky there. Just had a boat go by and throw some wake on me. That rod tip was moving around. Who knows, maybe it triggered the bite. Let me tell you about when I'm gonna use this tactic. Because a lot of people would say, well, gee, John, why don't you just go Lindy rig right now? If you're getting these fish to bite doing this, why not just pull a Lindy rig? And here's why. Lindy rigging is slower, and these fish are scattered. When fish are scattered, I would rather use some type of technique that's gonna speed me up. And this tactic has got me moving just under a mile an hour. There's another good fish. So two things. One, I'm moving much faster, and by moving faster, I'm getting to biters. Number two, I'm triggering strikes. If the bite's a little tough, I'm triggering strikes because these fish are having to chase. And if you can get them to chase, most of the time, fish like that walleye right there, he's gonna bite. There's no reason he's not gonna bite. And lastly, at this time of the year, when you're fishing water that is a little bit shallower, a little skinnier, okay? I'm in 15, 16 feet. Lindy rigging is much more of an under the boat type of process, okay? Now you might be back at a 45-degree angle, but you're closer to the boat. Now as soon as I get in water, 20 feet or deeper, or stained water, I'm not as worried about it. But at this time of the year, especially on clear water lakes, I wanna get back away from the boat a little bit. Two things here. One, I get asked a lot, geez, why do you fish out of the back of the boat all the time? Well, one thing is, I'm getting my line and my bait further away from the boat. Number two, this technique is gonna make it so that you're getting further away from the boat. So that's the time that I'm gonna use this technique. When I'm sitting in a scenario where I need to trigger some fish, when the fish are scattered out a little bit, and when I'm in that mid-range depth to shallow depth where I wanna get back away from the boat. It's just deadly when you put all those three things together and you just go through an area with scattered fish, because here and there you're gonna pick them up. There he is. Got him. Oh yeah, feels like another pretty good fish. Look at that. I'll tell you what, this dragon jigs. This is actually one of my favorite ways to fish, because a lot of times, especially on the weekends, you don't see this, but on the weekends I spend a lot of time fishing with the family, whether it's my daughter and her friends, or my son, or my wife, or whatever it may be. This is so simple because a lot of it you can just do in the rod holders. Chuck it out there, let it ride along with a shiner minnow, and you can do it right in the rod holder. Look at that, another awesome fish. Boy, is this one pretty. Wait till you see the colors on this one. This thing is just a beautiful walleye. Man, I'll bet you he's gonna be really close in that keeper range too. We're gonna measure this fish and take a look. Man, look at that fish. What a beautiful walleye. That's just a pretty, pretty fish. Take a quick look here and see if this one's a dinner fish. Nope, a little bit short, but what an awesome, beautiful fish, isn't it? Look at that. There he is, right there. Feels like a decent fish too. Just goes to show you, man, you can set up and do this anywhere. I mean, this is just pulling in, finding a similar depth, and doing the same thing. The same identical thing to what I was doing earlier. Feels like a good one too. You know, it's great too. Same depth. Along a shoreline now, but same depth. Nothing changed here. still that 16, 15, 16 feet. And staying right in that neighborhood put me in a position here where you were able to get a fish right away. And it just goes to show you, though, that you're putting together a pattern. If you put that pattern together, whether it's a little bit of mid-lake type stuff or, you know, first structures offshore or a point coming out from a shoreline, you can make it all come together. Get out and pull some jigs. I'll tell you what, pick up a bag of shiners, pull some jigs around, and I'll tell you, you're gonna catch a lot of fish. This is an easy tactic, easy for everybody to do, and it's a lot of fun. Get out of here, buddy.